Sometimes when people talk about books, they say the word literature. Now, literature is just a fancy way of saying books. Literature is part of what we call the arts. Now, the arts include things like painting, sculpture, dance, theater, music, and literature, or books. Now, each of the arts is divided into genres. Remember when I talked about genres? It's that fancy French word that means kind or type, like what kind of book is that? You probably heard your teacher talk about genres during reading time. Now, just a quick review of the 4 words we've already learned to help us understand books better. Fiction means it's fake, non-fiction means it's not fake, narrative means it tells a story, and expository means it's trying to teach us something. So, think of fiction and non-fiction as 2 big walls in a room. Each of those walls has shelves for different types or kinds of books, book genres. That helps us organize books better, and it can help us understand books better too. Now, all of the genres fit into either fiction or non-fiction, and some can fit in both. Let's take a look at some of the basic genres and where they fit. Now, as we talk about genres, we're going to be seeing examples of narrative and expository books all over the place, so keep your eyes open for those. First, let's take a look at fiction genres. Remember, fiction means fake or made up, so any genres that have stories that aren't real belong in the fiction section. The fiction genres include fables. These are stories that teach a lesson. They usually involve animals that talk and have problems like people. The most famous one that you probably know about is the tortoise and the hare. Grandmother Spider brings the sun, and the ant and the grasshopper are 2 other examples. Fantasy. These are stories where things happen that couldn't happen in real life. Things like magic, superpowers, talking animals, or creatures that are made up like fairies or dragons. How to Train Your Dragon, The Spiderwick Chronicles, and Emily Windsnap and the Siren's Secret are all fantasy books. Folklore, legend, and tall tale. Sometimes these 3 are separated, but they all have some pretty similar characteristics. They're passed down through a culture, and they usually involve a hero. Stories like Pecos Bill, John Henry, and One Grain of Rice all belong in this genre. Next, realistic fiction. Remember, fiction means it's made up, but the word realistic tells us that it's something that could happen. These are stories about normal kids like you or grown-ups like me. This genre would include books like Frindle, The City of Ember, and Like Pickle Juice on a Cookie. Historical fiction. This one is a lot like realistic fiction, but the tricky part is that the setting is something that did actually happen. Now remember, a setting is where and when a story happens. So, books like Fever 1793, The Watsons Go to Birmingham, and Number the Stars are historical fiction. Mystery. These are stories about solving a crime or uncovering secrets. The Mysterious Benedict Society, The Secret of Zoom, and Harriet the Spy are all mysteries. Science fiction. Stories involving science. Now, a lot of times these stories will involve space or other planets. The science fiction genre includes books like Tentacles, Cyborg, and The Last Book in the Universe. Horror. These are scary books. The Graveyard Book, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and A Tale Dark and Grim are all in the horror genre. Most books in the fiction genres will be narrative. They tell stories. But that doesn't mean you can't have an expository fiction book. Take a look at books like Dragonology, Alienology, or The Secret Life of Princesses to see expository fiction. Now, nonfiction. Remember, nonfiction means it's real or not made up. There aren't quite as many genres here. We're only going to take a look at 3. First, biography. This is a word made up of 2 other words. Bio, meaning life, and graph, meaning writing. So biography is writing or a book about somebody's life. Your school library will definitely have a biography section, and in there you can find stories about all kinds of cool people. Your favorite athletes, musicians, presidents, movie stars, and other famous people like Walt Disney, Harry Houdini, and Neil Armstrong. You might even learn about some cool people you didn't even know existed. I recommend Jacques Cousteau and Amelia Earhart. Next, narrative nonfiction. You should be able to guess what kind of books are here. Narrative means it tells a story, and nonfiction means it's not made up. So these are stories about real things. Like Chew on This, 3 Cups of Tea, or A Young People's History of the United States. Last, expository nonfiction. This is where you'll find most nonfiction books. These are books that tell you about things. Everything from bugs and rainforests to volcanoes and world wars. They can also be books that teach you how to do something. Like how to make egg carton monsters, paper airplanes, or origami. There are 3 other genres that can be either fiction or nonfiction. It just kind of depends on what they're about. Drama. Now, these are books in the form of a play. Plays, like stories, can be either fiction or nonfiction. But the thing with a play is it's meant to be acted out. So when you see it written down, to the side you'll see character names so you know who's talking. Ask your teacher or librarian about plays or reader's theater. Poetry. Now, a lot of times when we think of poetry, we either think it's pretty sappy love poems or they're silly poems that rhyme, like Dr. Seuss. Love poems and rhyming poetry are two types of poetry, but there are other kinds too. And poems can be either fiction or nonfiction. Shel Silverstein and Jack Prelutsky are two examples of good old silly fun poetry. Take a look at Walt Whitman or Sharon Creech for some other kinds of poetry. Lastly, graphic novels. These are books that use pictures to help tell the story, like comic books. Bone, Baby Mouse, and Warriors are all graphic novels. A lot of classic grown-up books have also been turned into graphic novels to help kids understand them better. You can find graphic novels of stories like Tom Sawyer or The Odyssey. So if you don't like reading those big, thick books with a lot of big words, ask your librarian if they have a graphic novel version. You can also ask about what other kinds of graphic novels your library has. Alright, we just talked about a lot of stuff, so quick review. Genre is a French word that means kind. Now, books are divided into genres or kinds to help us understand and organize them better. You probably already have a favorite genre and didn't even realize it. Next time you're at the library, check out a book from a different genre. You might discover something pretty cool you didn't even know was there.